This is my Harbor Freight Bridge saw. I am cutting 18 by 18 travertine tiles. I try to order the cuts so that I keep each set of 4 tiles to be of the same pattern. This process was done with time lapse. The time to cut 4 pieces into 64 pieces was actually 45 minutes. Travertine is full of voids and sometimes the saw will break part of a stone. I have had some where I got 64 complete tiles from a box, and sometimes I have lost as many as 7. 4 by 4 tiles while cutting them. The saw has a water pump that keeps the blade wet, which reduces dust, and keeps the blade from overheating. Cleaning the stone. I wash the stones, front and back, in my wash basin. Then I set them out to dry overnight. I clean the tiles with denatured alcohol. Then I store them in sets of 4. When I am ready to put the masks on, I will clean them a second time. My plotter software allowed me to trace the crest artwork and create a pattern that the plotter can cut. The software is Sure Cuts a Lot Pro. I center the artwork into this shape. Then I create 4 duplicates, and finally, 3 rows. You will see why the corners are cut this way later in this video. This is a time-lapse video, as it takes about 44 minutes to cut 12 masks. You will see what real time looks like soon. The actual time to cut 12 crest patterns was around 40 minutes. You cannot see the cut lines in this video. There is a 30-degree blade that is cutting the vinyl. The speed that this is being cut is 300 millimeters per second. The vinyl I use is Avery paint mask. It is 3.5 millimeters thick. It is also high-tack, so that it sticks well to stone. Removing the space between the images. I separate the space between the images. Then I cut the images into sets of 2. My transfer tape is 10 inches wide. I trim the edges, and they are ready to put on the tiles. Applying the transfer mask to the vinyl. This is the process of applying a transfer sheet to the vinyl. This shows a small batch is done. Applying masks. Now you can see why I have the notches in each corner. I peel the backing from the vinyl. I put the vinyl sticky side up. Then I place the coaster in alignment with the notches. After that, I fold the sides down and the notches wrap around the corners. This is protection from the blasting process, and also protects the sides when we paint the coaster. Picking the mask. I use an X-Acto knife to pick the mask. What you don't see is the magnifying visor on my head. There are lots of areas to pick on the class of 1968 crest design. I want to thank my son and my wife for doing most of the picking on this project. Here is the finished masks. We did 196 of these. Blasting cabinet. I built this blasting cabinet. Here you can see that sandblasting is a little bit like painting. You know what you have done because the yellow vinyl turns gray as the silicon carbide grit hits the stone and the mask. It takes a little over 2 minutes to blast each coaster. My blaster nozzle has a 3/30 seconds opening and I am using silicon carbide that started out as 80 grit. Silicon carbide does not get dull. It just turns into smaller grit. I reclaim the used grit after each blasting day. I have learned over the years that you should keep the nozzle moving. The silicon carbide heats up the vinyl if you stay in one spot and it melts away. So, going back over the previously blasted areas is the best way. Painting the coasters. I use Rust-Oleum Universal Paint because it works well with masonry. I have a Lazy Susan I use for painting. I spray a coat from each side. This ensures the paint gets in all of the blasted areas. I allow the coasters to dry on my drying rack. On warm days I move the rack to the shade of my porch. I clear coat. Rust-Oleum matte clear is used to protect the painted areas. By painting when the mask is still on, we keep from spraying the coaster and making it shed water. Removing the mask. I remove the surrounding area of the mask first. Then I use a 4-inch scraper to remove the mask from the crest design. I check for any bleeding caused by the travertine fill to allow the paint to seep under the mask. I use my X-Acto knife to remove any runs. Cutting cork. I cut cork with a box cutter. I make 3 1/2 inch strips. Dolly roll cutter. I next trim the cork pads down to 3 1/2 by 3 1/2 inches using a dolly roll cutter. I use tight bond wood glue to hold the cork to the coasters. I spread the glue evenly over the cork. I then place the cork onto the coasters. I place a 4x4 cardstock between the coasters as I stack them. That prevents any glue from getting on another coaster. I set 4 coasters in a stack, and put 4x4 stones to hold them down. And that is how the coasters are made. Thank you to the class of '68, and thank you for your service. Please visit our website, texrocks.com.